Welcome to Testimony Mountain. It's always a joy to have Jessie back. And we actually haven't, I don't know if we've had a time together since the retreat. So I don't know if we want to share anything about that. I know you have on other platforms. But
Yeah, well, I felt like it went amazing. It's always a great time when we get together, and we'll talk a few minutes about upcoming. But I think for me, some of the more memorial uh, things were going to the L.B. Johnson Library,
yeah,
and as we walked in, we're walking up too. It was interesting because it looks just like the Second Temple of Israel. It's built as a replica for that. And then as we got in there, there were quotes and signs like, in there. I've noticed like when the Brotherhood do museums or sites, or they're marking, you know, I will say mid-level spiritual gates, they'll often make them as, tour places where people are coming. They're going to have lots of quotes everywhere, but those things are going to be kind of indicators or riddles that those in the upper levels will know, where to look to find, entrances or exits into the underground, or to find ritual ground things, whatever they're offering, you're going to find it there. So as we walked in, we saw, you know, that there were all these quotes about water. And as we looked, the stairwell itself was built to look like water. And as you started to enter onto that, you see it open up into this big, massive area where they even, the area is kind of surrounded by, portraits of former presidents and their wives. And why did they do that? It's really a form of necromancy, that they're calling on the dead as they're accessing those gates. So we were able to see that, and then at the top of the stairs, there was this massive easel, masonic easel, that had 4 quotes around the sides of it. And each of those quotes gave, access to like a different entrance point or exit point. So we were figuring those out, and it was interesting because one of the ones at the wall, like, do you remember that they had this gold
yes,
picture wall, and it pointed at the very end where there was this like mountain in there, and we were able to identify that, which then, was like a secondary ritual area that they were directing people to. Then we found the ritual spot that was there on the property that looked right, Lady Bird Johnson's office looked right out to it. So that was interesting because I know many people, they want to believe she was good, that she wasn't numbered among the elite women socialites, but yet everything we saw,
yes,
indicated she was not the bomb shiggity bomb that we wanted her to be. And I think for me, we found like one of the things they had displayed a picture that showed the building of the library, and she was very influential in that. They made that, a high point. And in that, she was pointing to a spot which just so happened to be that same spot that her window looked out to. And then right underneath it, they put this quote that you're like, what in the world is that about? But it was about, I want to see this building clothed in flesh. And you're
yes.
like, what? So just interesting things like that.
Well, that was what was so intriguing to me is, most of us in the know generally, know occult symbolism to a degree. But what I so loved what you brought is there was such a depth to the structure and things that, the majority of us, would not necessarily pick up. Although it was interesting that, even though not all my memories are in, I recognized that one spot outside of her window as something, and there was a couple
Yeah.
of different things like that were confirming. That was kind of neat to go, oh, okay, well, intuitively there was something there,
Hmm.
to recognize. So, and,
Yeah.
and I think, going up to the 10th floor and feeling that frequency where we all got dizzy and nauseous.
Yeah, so that was like they had a floor that you went up to. Like they only allowed like what was it, the fourth, or no, the third and the 10th, right? We're the only
I think
ones.
second, third, and 10th. Yeah.
Okay, so when we got up to the 10th floor, as we all got off the elevator, all of a sudden it was just like it. I mean, it just like hit you super hard. This extreme dizziness and nauseousness.
Mhm.
And we were like, what is this? And as everybody who came off was feeling it, even people who don't really recognize things in the spiritual, and they were like I am not feeling good all of a sudden. So we stopped and prayed, and then it went away.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the warfare there was really interesting.
And then it's not funny, but it was kind of funny in that the media was played throughout, and most of the time we weren't paying any attention to it, but it was on that 10th floor. We were kind of scattered around the 10th floor, but this video was playing, and all of a sudden we hear, LBJ, how many babies have you killed today? And it was, everybody's head was like, what? And of course
Yeah,
it
it was
was,
like stuck on that part, like it kept going. I think it was showing a riot because of the war,
yes,
something like that, but it kept playing that over and over, and we were like, wait.
in plain sight.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was
What was
quite the trip.
interesting too is not so much like, it's like seeing all the interconnections, I think, especially the establishment of things with Iran and
Mm,
Afghanistan. I
yes.
don't think people realize how involved he was in those areas. And there was a lot on display about that. And then, they had on display all the symbols for the different projects and programs through NASA, that he had been connected to. And so, what I was showing everybody was that you can look at those badges for the different projects and programs. And from those, you can see which brotherhood orders oversee or control those projects.
Wow.
So we saw like a lot of, like for Project Gemini, behind it, you have a lot of the Order of Odin, um, also Project Orion. Um, we saw a lot of the Rotarian
Mm.
symbolism, the hats, the development of the youth programs. They were highly involved in the forming of like the government assistant programs for children, so it seemed like they were highly involved in some of those programs. And
Yeah, and it was interesting, the children's programs, things that they were doing. I guess I would have expected happy children on the posters or whatever, but the
they
kids didn't
didn't look
look
happy.
happy.
Like they looked like they were terrified and scared, and you're like, what, why would they take a picture of a child that's not happy, because you
Yeah.
want to promote the program, not make it something that people are leery of. But who
Yeah.
knows?
It was quite the adventure, and we're looking forward to you coming back in March, and I think we're gonna take a look at the Capitol then, so that's gonna be
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, we'll begin to talk about the priestesses, the priestess groups, how they work and operate, how you can find where they're working and operating in your areas. And then, a lot of them are highly connected to the Capitol buildings because, they're really temples of Artemis.
Wow.
So it gets interesting as you look into that, how the structure of a building tells you whose temple it is and the type of worship that's required in that building.
Wow. Wow. That will be so good, I can't wait.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
And then I've really enjoyed, I didn't get to the full one last night. I'm looking forward to the replay, but to the land assignment courses. And that's kind of what we're going to jump off today is after the first one, and you were teaching on the city sigils, I went through all of, or the majority of the cities that I lived in from birth on. And it's quite interesting, the story that it tells. And to me, not just the plans of the enemy, but also God's intention, but the twist, of the enemy. And so it just gives a deeper insight into things. And so we just thought it would be kind of fun to take a look at that together and
Right.
move forward. So you good to start with that?
I am. Yeah.
All right. And we're going to see if I can get this technology. So I was born in Loma Linda, California. And immediately you can see quite some interesting things here.
Definitely. So when a higher level person is going into an area, they're going to want to know who are the authorities. Those are going to be both the principalities as well as the brotherhood orders that are in charge of those areas. Now, everybody can look at, and I encourage people, go and, just type in your city and state or the one you want to look at, and then type in city sigil behind it. You should get a circular sigil like this that pops up. And what it is, we've talked about how the brotherhood, they divide things, authority by jurisdiction. So, at the very top, you have the grand high priest and priestesses and the councilmen who are assigned to quadrants, both internationally and in the United States. And then underneath them, you have the high priests and priestesses who are going to oversee regions. So what these sigils are, they're the regional markers for those members to know who's in control and authority. So if they go into a city, where are they going to go? Who are they going to talk to? What orders are they working with? What they also will know then too is if they're, not in good standing or they're having issues with certain orders, they're going to know not to step into that territory. So the first thing, or let me say this too. So these circular ones, if you find that yours is circular, that means that that city is still under the old system jurisdiction. So the old system is called Babylon, and that was under the financial headship of the Vatican. All right. But what we're seeing is, we know this past year that the Vatican was bankrupt. They lost all their money. They have nothing. And we started seeing all of the city signs turn into rectangular signs with just the city name, no other information on them. And what that means, if yours is like that, it means that, your city has shifted from being under the Vatican to being under the new system, which is the Leviathan system, which means that it's under the financial backing of the Sanhedrin. So, that's important to know as you're looking for these things. So, this one we see, that it's still under the authority of the Vatican. Now, how we read these, we read it like a 3-layered clock. So the first layer of the clock, the outer layer, we see, it has the city name, it has the incorporated, it has some dots. Well, that tells us a few things. The first thing that we're looking at is, who's in charge. Every region is going to have 2 masonic lodges that kind of run that area. The first one that's going to be on top, displayed on top, is going to be the Northern Lodge. The bottom one is going to be the Southern Lodge. And what you'll see as you look at these outer layers is that sometimes that top part, the top wording, will be shorter, and the bottom wording will be, bigger in those areas, or they could be equal. But what that does is it tells us which of those two lodges has more authority or pull in the area. So in the city of Loma Linda, California, we see that the Northern Lodge is the one that has all the authority in that area. So if somebody was coming into coming into that area from the system, they're going to go to the Northern Lodge. Okay. The second thing we see are those two dots, and those, like, they could be dots, they could be stars, they could be diamonds. They switch it up a bit, but that just tells us that there is military underground in that area. So, and it tells you where in the region those military facilities, like it could be just a facility, it could be a lab, it could be a fort, it could be a big underground dome, but it tells you that those are there in that area. Now, there's some other symbolism that we'll see that's going to give us kind of more of a picture that it's not just a lab or a small military facility, that there's something bigger there, because as we begin to look now at the picture, like if you imagine this symbol as a clock, you see that there's a lot of emphasis, a lot of the picture up at the 12 o'clock mark. Okay. Now, in the system, that begins to tell us the demonic principalities that are over the area. The 12 o'clock point is where Abaddon has, that's his sign for authority. So that tells us Abaddon is involved, and wherever Abaddon has a slice of his pie, you can be guaranteed that you're going to have major military presence, which he's involved, in the training, both with the U.S. military as well as sovereign military, the MK Ultra programs, HARP, DARPA, CERN. Those are kind of Abaddon's big deal. So we see that emphasis. So that tells us that military is more than just, a little place they're going to use for storage of some sort. So there's something underground there. The next thing, kind of looking at, where the pictures are pointing, we see kind of some more emphasis at the, right around the 3 o'clock mark. So that tells us that Moloch is going to have a bit going on there. We also see, a little bit around, like we'd say, the 4 or 5 o'clock mark. So that's going to be Baphomet. And then, and wherever you have Baphomet, you're going to have sovereign military in that area. We also see, down at the bottom, we see that the wording serving man, and they're kind of filling that space at the 6 o'clock mark, which tells us that Leviathan is going to have some authority, especially over the waterways. And as we look at this, we see that background image is literally a map of the world.
Yeah.
And that serving men is in that waterway. So this literally tells us that this base, that's there, has submarine access. So, there's big access to waterways underneath that California area. And it has access all over the world from there. So, pretty big. Then we see, kind of up towards like the 9, 10 point, we see stuff there. So that's going to be Thoth. Wherever you see Thoth, you're going to have a lot of first to third degree Masonic lodges. They're going to do a lot of recruiting for new members. But, I would say that's not their focus in this area. Their focus is, right front and center, which is the last demonic principality. Whenever you see a lot of heaviness in the symbol in the middle of the sigil, that means you've got Ashtaroth. Okay. So that means you're going to have a lot of priestess training in the area of a specific sort. In this one, I'll say there's 4 main priestess groups that we're looking for in our areas. You've got the priestesses of Delphi, you've got the priestesses of Melissa, the daughters of the Nile, and the priestesses of Gaia. Who's going to usually be connected at those upper levels with this? It's usually the priestesses of Delphi in areas. So, you could search that area to see if there's priestesses of Delphi. But that torch in the middle is your main indicator. Like, they don't indicate any other brotherhood groups except for 2, pretty much. The first one, that flame, that comes directly from initiates of the flame. So that tells you that area is high in priests of the order of Melchizedek. So you're going to be dealing with upper, order priest levels. They could be, because it's not defined, like, the next 2 higher orders in the system under the order of Melchizedek is you have the Order of the Golden Dawn, or the Temple Orientis, and you have the Order of the Phoenix. If one or the other is more prominent, they're going to display that. Like Order of the Golden Dawn, you would see a sunshine or a half sunshine with rays in there, or if it's Order of the Phoenix, usually you see like a firebird of some sort that's displayed in the imagery. But we don't see either, so that means that it could be both equally in that area. You also have the snake up the pole, which that is very specific. People can look up, a free online copy of the Initiates of the Flame book by Manly P. Hall, and you'll see that exact symbol of a snake. And what does it mean to them? It's literally a spell, and it means, multiply. So, this is an area where they multiply Initiates of the Flame. Now, when you hear that, what is your first thought about that?
Multiply. I don't know.
I think most people would think it just means like they're recruiting.
Yeah.
But what this is actually showing us is that, that underground base there is invested in different, I would put it, they've got a big breeder program underground. Yeah. So, they're breeding dragon seed. That snake also represents, the seed of the serpent in the temple. Like sometimes you'll see like gravestones of people that it looks like, it's a money sign, but it has like 3 things through it, 3 columns. That's one of the signs for a seed of Satan,
Wow.
Which basically means that they are part of the German Lebensborn projects that were the special breeder programs for, those they believed they were breeding gods.
Yeah.
So that's where all of that's connected to.
So
Go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say the last thing is, with that world connection, it also means that you've got higher level people within that system who have, worldwide pull. So, that's a pretty high area. You could expect that, you're going to have councilmen and upper level individuals who, will be having homes there, or, their family lines will be part of these programs to breed specialty children for the system.
Wow. And it was interesting to me with the map because I've always been fascinated with world maps, and I would have maps all over my room. And I've always known I meant to have a global impact. Now, God had plans for that, but
Absolutely.
so did the enemy. Now, what's interesting about this is so this was the city was incorporated a year after I was born. I was born at Loma Linda University, and I have their things, which is very similar.
Yeah.
So there's an
You see
older
the
one
crest. I
and a
see
newer
that.
one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that they're involved with or have connections underground to that breeder program,
Yeah.
because you see that same initiates of the flame, the great flame right there in the middle of their crest.
Yeah.
The crests are read a little bit differently. The circular sigils or the rectangular ones that we see with the cities are regional, but the
Mhm.
crests are meant to be read internationally. So you have to pull more into the interpretation as you're reading it, because it's really talking about times, seasons, and different types of governance. Um, so as we look at that, the first thing we see is that it displays, the crest in a symbol almost like a chalice.
Mm.
Um, so without that full point or that divination of the point, it's really looking like a cup, which tells us which, you know, group of individuals they're more targeting in the breeding program.
Mm.
Uh, if it would be like a compass or have more of that, um, you know, V-shaped dip at the bottom, that would tell us, that it was focusing on boys. But this is telling us that their primary focus is females.
Oh.
That's what they specialize in. And we see that also symbolized by the laurels that are around the sides of the crest. Those laurels represent priestesses. Um, so they're breeding high level sorceresses. And, you see the medical symbol there with the snake again, um, indicating both the seed of Satan, but it also tells you that, the form of witchcraft that they're going to be looking and training, these are going to be females that are high in apothecary and different type of, um, being able to know herbs and medicine,
Mm.
pharmakia, pharmakia going all the way back to the land of Canaan. It was actually the witches, or the descendants of the women in the Nephilim that would do the pharmakia. So, that goes way back. Um, you also see the sword there, the broken sword, which means that there's going to be a tie to this area with, Avalon in the UK, and that's
Wow.
going to actually be Edinburgh. So Edinburgh is going to, is another underground training facility, but that's where they'll train knights and priestesses. So, it seems like this is, their focus is that they'll train the pharmakia side, but they'll outsource those, some of them to that Edinburgh area.
Mm.
We also see, the red triangle in the middle indicating Ashtaroth and, the different programs that she oversees. With this, we also see, the three great lights kind of indistinctly shown. Um, the Masons and the higher level Luciferian Brotherhood, when they're doing rituals, they will always have the three great lights displayed.
Mm.
So those are usually the compass, um, you know, the book, and an easel. So we see kind of that, that the top of the crest or this triangle part representing, kind of both um, the easel as well as the compass upside down, and then you have the great book there, and you have their homage to Lucifer through the great white light. Um, so that tells us that underneath this area, you're also going to have a ritual ground, an altar. Underneath everything, we see this ribbon that says to make men whole. That ribbon represents within the system, the sovereign military, their sign that they'll put with the cross. In this sign we shall conquer. So you'll see that white ribbon representing a treaty to Lucifer, and the offering will be on it. So the offering is that they're going to, excuse me, make men whole. But what are they really meaning by that? They're dealing in the seed of Satan.
Mhm.
What do they believe makes men whole? They believe that means they're making men into gods,
Oh,
and that means that they have to have women that can breed gods, that can birth gods. So um, that's where some of that symbology comes in. And we see in their newer symbol, they keep a lot of the, it's very similar. You've got the crest in the same shape. You got the laurels and the great book there. But instead of the great white flame, we see, they've switched to the wings and the serpent.
mm.
Um, what do those wings represent? Well, um, they represent Isis, the goddess Isis, but they also represent Thelemic magic.
Mm.
So, we know with Thelemic magic that that's about sex magic, as particularly Aleister Crowley wrote about Thelemic magic, with little boys. So, we have to ask, like, from the time frame in the logos, have they maybe switched some of their focus from just solely focusing on breeding little girls to now they're including, you know, little boys that they're are in this program? We also see a shift in sides. We kind of see that pharmakia, the Isis priestess pharmakia symbol become front and forefront.
Mhm.
And what's interesting is that they literally put it right on the cross, which,
Wow.
we've said is one of their symbols for in this sign we shall conquer.
Mhm.
So are they, using that pharmakia in a way where the brotherhood system and the sovereign military, their focus is to stay in control and to raise up elite members, who rule the world through pharmakia. So, that's interesting. And they kind of put on the side, the world. Um, you've got the sun there, which, that's going to be connected to the golden dawn. You also have the sword down there and the initiates of the flame symbol. Now, there is more I have to look up here, because one of the interpretations, when you start to get deeper into their symbology and what exactly they're saying, is that you have to look at the Egyptian zodiac. You know, whenever you're dealing with priestesses, they pull that in. And, you know, some of the four-cornered symbolism we see is they're marking certain treaties or covenants with those Egyptian gods that they're working with, or the Egyptian demonic principalities, right?
Wow.
So who do we have in those four corners? You know, at the bottom where you see the great light, that's Thoth. Okay. At the top where we see, you know, the world or the globe, that's going to be Geb, who often is seen, you know, as a goose or a bird flying. At the other corner, you have actually, you know, Ammon, or the Nile River, Ammon Ra. And then at the bottom corner, you have Seth, or Set. So those are some of the symbologies that, you know, are being kind of hiddenly displayed there, that they're making covenants with these deeper Egyptian spirits, which, as we begin to get into the systems programming, like we talked about in the Rise of the Righteous, and particularly in the Beautifully Adorned course, I break down, you know, how their very first attachments and connections with children to these principalities are made to the Egyptian ones that most people never even think of, you know, they don't know about. So this is part of those first connections
Wow.
that are going to be made. And that tells us that those connections are made both here at this, you know, underground facility, as well as, you know, they may outsource some of those kids for those connections to Edinburgh. So,
Wow. Wow. Wow.
yeah, just interesting.
Well, and so just some of my own history. I really didn't have a lot. I thought that my trauma may have begun, you know, with a neighbor at 3 and on up. But some, I would, when my mom would repeat stories over and over, I would realize she was actually telling me something. And so she would say how my brother was born in the old Loma Linda hospital, but I was born in the new Loma Linda hospital. And as the Lord began to open that up, I saw this whole underground, and that I was actually born under. You know, I was not born in the upper hospital, but in the lower, you know, part of the breeding program, and believe that there are tunnels from there to China Lake military. And so those are just some of the things that, and interestingly enough, they live back in this area, and my dad is still working for Loma Linda University. So,
Interesting.
but after that, we moved to Redmond, Washington, and this is more the modern one. So I don't know.
Yeah. So as we see here, you know, we definitely see it's changed. So, you know, Redmond is not under any longer the Babylon system, but they're under the new Leviathan system, under the Sanhedrin. Now, at first, when you look at that, it just, like, what do you see in that symbol?
Well, the tree, but it looks like a bird.
Yeah, it looks like a heron or
Yeah.
something. That's important because a lot of people, you know, are not aware of the side councils within the system. We've talked about, you know, the main council of 300. But then you have all these select councils, like the Council of Five, the Council of Seven, the Council of Nine. Okay, they go by odd numbers up to 21. Now, if there's a matter in a region where they can't solve that matter amongst themselves, then it will be brought to the special councils who will determine what happens. One of those councils, the Council of Nine, is known as the Ennead, which is an Egyptian bird. They're connected to the secret society of the Audubon, which is the Bird Society. So, this is telling us that in Redmond, Washington, we have a high level number of, or, also it's a place where the Ninth Council members, the Ennead, are going to meet. They may have some specialty territories, museums, or land up there that they have where they can meet. And, wherever the wooded area is, that's probably where their camp or their meeting area is going to be, kind of outside. I'd be curious because from how I read this and how I see everything positioned, it's kind of like you've got Redmond, Washington, the city, off of the water being shown, and almost like there's an island off there. So my guess is that there would be an island, in that direction. Kind of we see the city positioned where those Ninth Council members meet.
Wow.
The Ninth Council is connected to the Council of Nine or the Circle of Nine. So that means they're also going to, engage in consuming human flesh.
Wow. So Redmond is a suburb of Seattle. So you have the San Juan Islands, and quite a lot of different islands all around there. So that's very, very fascinating.
One of those, look for the one.
Yeah.
Maybe the island kind of looks like a bird, or maybe it looks like the trees. But there'll be something there that, is very particular that they're directing people towards.
Wow. So from there, we moved inland to Spokane. This was kind of interesting because they have the main, city of up there, but then they had the office of mayor, city council, and they were in different colors. So I just wasn't sure if
that is interesting, and it is significant, I believe, because when you're seeing the different sigils that are on local governmental, regional buildings, you begin to break down into the regional structure or hierarchy for governance. So purple is, going to be higher level. That usually is going to be connected to a position they call supreme. So whether that's a supreme preceptor or a supreme, illustrious leader, that's going to be where your higher level individual is. So when I see that, I have to ask, is that office, if they're distinguishing, is whoever is in that office, do they make it a requirement that they have to be a supreme leader in that regional area, which means either they're going to be connected to the Masonic Lodge and be the supreme illustrious leader over the lodges in the area, or they're going to be a supreme preceptor, which has a different name, which I'm not going to say right now, but the preceptors or preceptor people are those who oversee the sovereign military and their training in the area. So, they'll be connected to one of those two things. The green represents, a preceptor. So they could be, that's definitely going to be connected to the sovereign military, but those individuals can be priests in the Jesuit Catholic Church. So, you'll see them more often where they'll wear their robes that are green in color. Uh, you know, you'll see a certain symbol where, it's got like a straight line and then it's got like a two lines up on top for the cross, but that's the sign of a preceptor.
Hmm.
So, is there preceptors within the city council, or is the city council under that preceptor's authority? That's how I would read that.
Okay.
Then you've got, the city of Spokane symbol itself. We see more that rectangular sign. So that tells us it's under, the Sanhedrin, under the Leviathan system already. As we begin to look at that, it gets harder as you get into the new system because it's not as easy to tell, which principalities or which orders, or if they're pointing to specific places.
Mhm.
It gets really hard to tell those things because they leave all that information out. But in this one, we see a heavy part of, water, so that we at least know that there's going to be a connection there to that city of Leviathan. So that's what we can tell out of that.
With the arch and looks like six pillars, I guess if you wanted to say, would that be significant or?
You have 7 there, which could
Oh, seven.
represent the 7 rays of light. But as we look at, because they keep using, it would be interesting to know if the symbols for the mayor and Spokane office, their city council, if those are the older city sigils, we see quite a bit in there that tells us exactly who we're dealing with.
Mhm.
First, we see the sunshine in the upper right corner telling us that, there's going to be a high influence of Golden Dawn in the area.
Okay.
We see the mountain in the background, which tells us you're going to have the Order of Odin. That's going to be connected to the sovereign military. We see in there, the bridge indicating usually that means that there's a spiritual gate there. And we see the waterway with the Indian teepees and kind of, the palms.
Mhm.
That tells us, the palms tell us that there's going to be priestess groups in the area. The palms either will represent the priestesses of Delphi or the priestesses of Melissa. The Indian teepee, sometimes in the symbols, it could be an Indian itself, but that means that you're dealing with the Order of the White Buffalo.
Hmm.
And they often work hand in hand regionally with the Order of Odin. So usually you'll see the two in areas together.
Wow, fascinating. From here, we made a big move to Virginia. And
Good old Virginia, Lewis and Clark.
it's interesting to me because the city of Culpeper or town of Culpeper was a base for the Finders cult.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just maybe 10 miles from them. We lived out in the middle of nowhere, but anyway.
Yeah, so we see a lot in this too. So remember, the first thing we start with is looking at this outer ring. And with that, we see, that the Northern Lodge has a little bit more authority than the Southern, but they're pretty much, their authority is pretty close. We see some numbers here, the 17 and the 49, which could be military installations in the area. Because we're not seeing a lot of heaviness in the area where Avedon would be
Mhm.
at the 12 o'clock. We see some wording up there, so I'll tell you what that means in a minute. But, it tells us that, that really there's not a lot of activity underground if they have major military stuff. So whatever's on the ground is going to be your lower, maybe your storage places, your National Guard, things like that. Okay. But because they do have that wording up there and it's, in this picture of the sky, instead of everything with the major military in the area being underground, it's going to be in the air.
Wow. Wow.
So, does that area have, floating military bases? It's plausible.
Hmm.
Um, so we know that there's a sky connection there. It also could be, um, aeronautical facilities, but usually like when we see that, there usually isn't, like, it's not distinguishing things on the ground. It means specifically that you've got, something going on up in the air. So, um, that's kind of interesting. And then, we know we know that the finders and other groups use a lot with things in the air. So, there's the plausibility that you've got some sort of plane or military planes that are operating on a regular basis through that airspace. That could be as well. Um, we see here, they make it look like Lewis and Clark, but really what it's representing to them is the brotherhood, two brothers, and other places you'll see the two men or the two women in the symbol. If you see the two men, it means that they're going to be high in the recruiting stages where you've got that first to third degree, and then they're going to start to focus on the specialty orders. um, it's going to be particular in this area to the sovereign military because we see the mountains in the background telling us, they're high with the Order of Odin. Um, also because of the, what did Lewis and Clark do? They did a lot of scouting.
Mhm.
So using Lewis and Clark is another way of implying that, this area raises up juniors in their programs. Like in their training programs, you have the child program that starts around age, 4.5, and goes till age 10. By age 10, you're fully trained for your position, but if you're not needed in your position, you go into what they consider the junior programs, which are where they'll specialize more in the different orders or the different circle groups that you're going to be connected to. So, they're going to have men groups here that are focused on training those juniors. So that could be, the Boy Scouts.
Oh,
So it'd be worth looking into that area to see if they have a high, connection to the Boy Scout programs.
wow.
Um, that also could be, Girl Scouts, it could be 4-H. So what that tells us, though, is then you have another order that's not predominantly displayed on here that's going to be connected to the lodges, a couple of them. The first is going to be the Order of Hibernian, which is connected to your Irish groups, and they're highly connected with the 4-H programs, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, um, the law enforcement, which is often, connected to the sovereign military order. You're also going to have the Order of the Foresters or the Order of the Tall Trees, but we don't really see a lot of the tree symbology in here. We
Mhm.
see more of what looks like forestry. So, I would say the Order of foresters you're going to have for sure. And then because of the scouting and the hunting gear, it's plausible that there's land and they're actually probably displaying it right in front of our faces there. But that's going to be their hunting grounds.
Wow.
So there may be lands where they do hunts to train their members of the sovereign military and human hunts right there in that area.
Wow. 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 From here, I moved back to Washington State, and I couldn't find anything for the town except for this.
Okay. Now, some of the towns you're not going to find the regional city sigils. Why is that? It's because many of them they'll have little historical signs, so you may be able to find that, and the historical signs are going to kind of tell you who has authority over the charter.
Okay.
So you may in fact have, you know, it may be a crest instead of a city sigil, or it could just be the sign, but there may be a charter with upper families in that area for that town. But we definitely we see the brotherhood and the different groups that are part here. Now I don't know the circular sign that's the top row all the way to the right there. I don't know the specific name of that, but what does that symbolize? It symbolizes the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay, I was wondering.
Yeah, you've got different Islamic groups that will come in through Ishmael at times. It'd be interesting because it could also represent a certain priestess group, but we'd have to look more, like search and see if we can find exactly what that symbol means. It looks like Arabic writing. So, I encourage people to research, look into that. We see like we said, how far is this? This is more the Washington area again, right?
Yeah. Back to
Okay.
a similar, close to Redmond in that same general region.
So we see the general, Masonic sign right there in the middle. That's going to tell us that, there are lodges, they do recruiting for those first three degrees up to Master Mason. So they're going to have a lot of focus on that, which means, that they're wanting to recruit people. They also want to get people involved in their humanitarian efforts. So that's what we kind of see with some of, what circle groups are they going to connect people to for those humanitarian efforts. You've got the Lions Club, the Kiwanis, the American Legion, and the Rotary.
Mm-hmm.
So they're specifically going to target people into those four circle groups that are going to get them involved in the humanities.
So I just wanted to find out from you, Jessie, we're about halfway through. Do you want to finish this next time we get together, or do you want to just kind of quickly go through the rest? Which would you prefer?
If we're halfway, I'd like to maybe take our time with it because I think there's a lot here, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
So if this is a good place to stop, or if you want to do one more.
Let me see what the next one is. Oh, this one was kind of interesting. We went to Michigan, and I couldn't find the city sigil, but it was a county. Okay. And it was called the Land of Four Flags.
So we can kind of talk through this, but and just kind of talk about some of the symbolism there. But I have to say that like the county symbols are different. So we can't get the same information, even though they may have some of the same symbols and symbology as we do on the other, on the state symbols. So, or the city symbols. So what we notice here, the first thing, it's going to be communicating to the regional people. And it's going to say right here in this spot, this is what is offered to Brotherhood members. So in that county, this is what they're going to have. All right. But, you know, we don't know exactly where, I guess we'll say, because I'm assuming if, you know, my guess is because of emphasis here that this is what you're going to find at the Northern Lodge. So
Okay.
if you come into the area, you're going to know you need to go to the Northern Lodge. When you go to the Northern Lodge, this is what they offer, okay? So we see, you know, again, the kind of the crest looking very much like a cup. So that tells us that there's going to be females that are offered. Um, you know, the upper right-hand corner looks kind of like beehives, or it could be towers. Um, if it is representing beehives, that's going to be priestesses of Melissa.
Okay.
So you're going to get a lot of nature things. You're going to try to connect. You know, there may be signs that they have in the community that they sell bee stuff. Um, that's going to kind of direct people as to where to go for certain things that they want. We also see at the bottom the fleur de lis, which tells you that there's, you know, Priory of Zion members in that area. You know, usually they're going to be connected to a university or, um, you know,
So
a financial institution.
this
Um, go
this
ahead.
was Berrien Springs, Michigan, was where that probably Loma Linda is one of the big Seventh-day Adventist universities, and then which is more medical. And then here in Berrien Springs, Michigan, is the seminary and a big
Okay.
university for the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay, so it could be connected to a seminary or a church of some sort. But like the priory members, you know, usually they work alongside of the councilmen, and they'll oversee like at institutions. So, you know, whether that's architecture, whether that's, you know, the Smithsonian, whether it's a financial institution, they're more involved in those upper levels of education somewhere. So it could be seminary very much indeed. Now, the other symbol we see here looks like the two lions side by side, which represents the house of Leo, but also, you know, represents usually that there's stuff in the south west quadrant, but they have it flipped here. And, you know, it looks like it's traveling from east to west, which is just kind of interesting because most Masonic things go, you know, from west to east.
Mm.
So, um, you know, it looks like, you know, people are going to be coming in from outside into that area versus, you know, they don't send a lot of people out. They have everybody come to them. They're
Wow.
not an area that's going to send out. Um, you know, so it can be interesting. The stars, you know, usually can represent a form of necromancy. It also can represent the deities that are in the area, that they got two, you know, you see a lot of the symbol of the two.
Hmm.
But what that can also represent is, you know, that area may focus, if they are connected to the breeder program. You know, we know that Joseph Mangala did a lot of projects and experiments that included twinning.
Yes. Yes.
So, you know, could this be a place where you know, they've got people who are doing the twinning at the higher levels, and these are their special, what do they twin? You know, they can twin, you know, priestesses, they can twin, you know, those that are, that are made to operate within the Leo dimensions universally, which is going to be more focused, I think I was trying to remember. Let me just look on that because that gets interesting, like as to the type of magic. I think that Leo is water, but let me quick see if I could see it fast enough here. Where do I have it? Yeah, you've got, because you start to get into their different types of, what type of sex magic are they training for? Just a second here as I look through my resources and find it. But then that would maybe explain why it's on the east side, because then that would be indicating, which military base they're going to kind of connect to. Leo's usually fire, I guess. So it could not be with that. But
do the colors, the blue and the red,
usually that represents the system, the financial, who's financially backing the programs.
okay.
So again, the blue is going to be the Roman side, which is the Vatican, and the red is going to be Judah or the Leviathan system. So that's going to be the Sanhedrin.
Wow. Very fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Starts
much.
to get
Jessie.
interesting. Yeah, usually I don't go down to like county or
okay.
Local government symbols too much because you get, they get so specific to the area.
Okay.
And it's harder because there can be so many changes that can be made throughout the years that it's hard to determine if, you also can have multiple layers into it as to what they're doing with that. So that gets a little harder without knowing all the exact programs or things that are operating. But once you kind of really, learn to look at this stuff, you can begin to kind of, look at the different programs and try to see, if you can connect up symbols and, which brotherhood groups they go to and kind of what they're doing in that area.
Wow, that is so amazing. And of course, this information isn't just to have information, but it gives us indication on how to pray.
Exactly.
And then particularly
pray
for those,
specifically.
yeah. And those of us who have been in the system, specifically what things we may need to address and break off. So very fascinating.
That's how I start, when you go over, you understand the names of the principalities that are involved, or the, Egyptian gods principalities that they may have linked you to. Then you simply rebuke, you rebuke, you remove their authority over you, and you cast them out. And, from there, then you look at who are the brotherhood groups that may have had authority over you in those areas or made contracts with these beings that, it wasn't your will. They did it because you were born in the area. Like you didn't choose it, right? But because you don't know and you don't contest it, it's considered willing consent.
Yeah.
Or because your parents went in and signed a paper and allowed them to, take your blood and take your footprints and all of that jazz, they think that they have the right. So you just simply, like when I pray over these things, like I would just address it, all authorities connected to the Loma Linda Hospital, I remove your authority and your permissions over me.
Yes.
I rebuke you in Jesus' name, and every spirit that you may have connected me to, I remove any rights that you have had to buy, sell, trade, or profit
Mhm.
off of me and my quantum identifiers, which include, my blood, my fingerprints, my footprints, my social security number, my name, um, or my descendant rights. I remove your authority over all those things, and I release myself from you in Jesus' mighty name. I belong only to Him. And I'll pray over my household too. As for
Yeah.
me and my household, we will serve the Lord Jesus Christ alone. Um, so it's not difficult to pray through that.
Yeah.
And you can go through each area where you have been and do that. Um, you know, it's a good thing to do. It's cleansing. It's really a deeper form of deliverance for survivors as you remove all those permissions that they've had over you. And I think it's important for people to know, one of the biggest abuses that I've seen in the system is that they want survivors to believe that we do not have control over our soul
Yep.
or our spirit or our body.
Mhm.
But we do.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ gives that back to us as we surrender that to Him and under His authority. And once it's under His authority, nobody has that authority or control over us anymore.
Yeah.
But sometimes we need to hear that. We need to hear the Lord say, I return to you the sole sovereignty of your spirit and your soul, you know, to do with it as you will. No one else can will over it, only you. And in that, I encourage every survivor then to say, Lord, it's my will to give that sovereign control over my spirit and my soul and my body to you. I entrust that to you, Lord. And, Jesus, you are my God. You are my Savior. You are the one who created me. You're the one who, made me to do great works for your kingdom. And I just surrender to that. I surrender to your will alone and declare this day that you um, alone are my God and my sovereign King and my Lord. So we just pray that in Jesus' mighty name
Yes.
and
Yes. Yes.
restore
Yes.
that.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jessie. This was a lot of fun. And I'll look forward to next time when we can do it again. And so just encourage you, those of you who are watching, you've gotten a little glimpse of some things that you can explore with the Lord. You can also take Jessie's land assignment courses. There'll be some in the new year, I'm assuming, coming
Yep.
up.
Next year.
Yes. So go to kingdomlivingwithjessie.com and sign up for a lot of really, really good stuff there. And so, anything else, Jessie?
I think that was it. What
Okay.
a great conversation. So,
Yes. So we just bless you all and we look forward to seeing you next time on Testimony Mountain.